Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was posted by a user named Icy Frame in the AITAH subreddit. The post is titled AITA for telling my husband that his affair child is not welcome in our home and if he wants custody, he will have to move out. My husband and I have been married for 9 years. In 2021, we found out that my husband was being sued for child support. It turns out my husband had an affair shortly after we were married. This nearly ended our marriage, but we went to counseling together and I agreed to stay in the marriage under the following provisions. My husband was to get a second job so that his child support payments would not affect our household budget, and at no point in time would I ever consider having a relationship with this child. If he wanted to pursue one with them, fine, but I have absolutely zero interest in this kid. So my husband has been getting to know his child over the past couple of years. Recently, he came to me and informed me that there was some sort of baby mama drama. Apparently, she has to self-surrender in May and will be incarcerated for 8 months. My husband told me that he needed to take custody while his affair partner is locked up. Otherwise, the child would have to go to their grandparents who live on the opposite coast from us. Their child doesn't want to change schools or be so far away from their friends, dad, and mom. After my husband told me that, I got up and left the house. I went to the grocery store on the corner, grabbed a copy of our area's apartment guide, went back home, and handed it to him. He asked if I was serious. I told him I still felt the same way as I did 3 years ago. He said he didn't think that was fair considering the extenuating circumstances. I told him I didn't care about the circumstances. His child is not welcome in my home. If he wanted to take custody, I would grant him an amicable divorce, but I am not changing my mind. I am not taking care of some other woman's kid. Edit. For all the people concerned about what a whipcracker I am for making my poor husband work 2 jobs. He has never had a full-time job since we have been together. He works 2 part-time retail jobs now that add up to 40 to 50 hours a week. He currently only has supervised visitation with his child. They see each other once or twice a month for a couple of hours with a social worker present. And for those who seem to think that I need to be the one to file for divorce, no, I will not. I am not the one who created this situation. If my husband wants to pursue custody, I have told him I will not fight it. I will grant him an amicable divorce and let him be on his way. However, I am not going to waste my own time, energy, and money to do so. He is responsible for getting his own ducks in a row for the situation he created. That includes being the one to deal with the headache of filing. It's hard to have any sort of sympathy for OP's husband. In fact, I'm surprised OP even chose to stay with him, considering he had the affair after they got married. Perhaps this is petty, but I don't think OP is in the wrong here. She set clear rules for her husband, and it simply boils down to what he wants to do. He made a poor decision, so now he needs to face the consequences. I want to have sympathy for OP, but my unfiltered opinion is that she should have broken off the relationship when she found out her husband was cheating. That being said, I think the only true loser here is, unfortunately, the child. User Major Distance said, "This marriage should have ended years ago." User New Day Today said, "No judgment, but this is the result of you staying with him after the affair." There's no way that having a child doesn't complicate your life. Kids aren't a side hobby, period. The fact that the therapist allowed the fairy tale notion to exist is wild. Divorce is the best option for everyone, including your husband, but especially for you. However, the child's best interest needs to be prioritized as well. People complain that others say to break up over everything, but they fail to realize that this kind of situation is toxic. User Kazbaha said, "This poor kid. I hope dad steps up and is there for them. OP, this isn't what you wanted for your life and relationship, and that's fair. You and your husband are on different paths. This is his responsibility, and I think it's reasonable that you asked him to move out and take care of his responsibilities alone. I don't think your marriage is going to work out." Update. After posting, my husband and I continued to discuss the situation. I held firm and reiterated again that I will not live with a child, and if my husband wants to pursue this, he will have to find other housing. We discussed divorce. We discussed temporarily separating. We discussed a lot. We sat down and had a pretty big financial talk, and I showed him the numbers he realistically had to work with. I told my husband the truth. While I love him, I won't lose sleep if we divorce. He has to do what's right for his own happiness and his child. My husband had a bit of a breakdown over that. There was a lot of crying, and he told me that he loved me and didn't want to lose me. I broke down myself. We had a good cry together. He asked if we could go back to our marriage counselor, so I made an appointment. We went and discussed the same things as above, but with a counselor present. It basically boils down to my husband being very overwhelmed and conflicted about everything. He confessed he didn't really want to be an active parent, but felt like he was supposed to. He is terrified of losing me and wants to prioritize our marriage. Hearing me say that I wouldn't lose sleep over divorcing shook him. Our counselor strongly suggested that my husband get into individual therapy and provided some referrals. My husband has not pursued that. It became pretty obvious to my husband that he was not in a place mentally or financially where he could take full custody. So the child is now in Virginia with the maternal grandparents. My husband was actually going to visit the child for their birthday this weekend. I gifted him some of my airline miles to buy his plane ticket. I did his laundry last night while he was at work so he'd have clean clothes to pack. However, my husband dropped the ball on his trip. I had plans for this afternoon that required me to leave early, so I wasn't home when he was supposed to get up and leave. He stayed up late playing video games last night and overslept, ultimately missing his flight and unable to afford last-minute tickets on another one. Now he's in a bad mood and is playing Elder Scrolls to try to take his mind off it. I've got my sister and some friends coming over soon for a salsa canning party, so I'm hoping he gets into a good groove with his game because I am going to have so much margarita. This next story was made in the relationship advice subreddit by a throwaway account. The post is titled, "I got assaulted a few days after my wedding 1 year ago and ghosted all of my friends and family, including my best friend, for months. How do I reconnect?" Important background context. In the 1.5 years prior to my wedding, I was riddled with a terrible physical illness. During that time, I was hospitalized more than 20 times, including right up to the day before my wedding. My family and friends were supportive and in my corner, but this situation caused me to feel like a burden, a feeling I couldn't shake, which becomes relevant later. Just a few days after my wedding, I was brutally sexually assaulted by a stranger after arriving at the hotel in the foreign country where we were honeymooning. I had only been married for about 72 hours, and it was my first real sexual experience. I don't want to share too many details here. It would take forever to explain just how diabolical it all was. Whatever you can imagine as the worst, it was in that ballpark. The aftermath of this event wreaked havoc on my mind, body, and soul. The attack caused multiple physical injuries that took months to address through surgeries and exacerbated my already existing chronic illnesses. After returning home, I was hospitalized on and off for 6 months, spending about 50% of that time in the hospital. I experienced clinical catatonia and completely shut down. I felt like a hollow ghost, incapable of any meaningful interaction. I was paralyzed by fear and shock. I also had to deal with the images in my head, the foreign assault case, and the distress of seeing my new husband deeply suffering as well. The pain, guilt, shame, and everything else consumed me. I completely shut down. I didn't answer any phone calls, texts, emails, nothing. This went on for about 6 months. My thought process at the time was that I did not want to burden my family and friends with such a horrific story, particularly after they had just seen me get married. If I couldn't handle it, how could they? It would be too devastating and would only add to the list of burdensome events in my life. For those closest to me, I knew this would consume them. I justified this in my mind by saying that I would take the time I needed to recover without burdening them with my trauma and recovery. I felt worthless, used, broken, and disgusting. Nobody would miss me anyway. I also knew that if I answered or connected with those close to me, I would pour my heart out and tell them everything, and I was scared of hurting them. I barely spoke to my own mother. She never knew anything related to the assault. She was told that I just had a lot of health issues, similar to what I had experienced before getting married, and that I had to be hospitalized frequently for surgeries. Other than my husband and medical professionals, I haven't told another soul to this day. It's hard to explain why it was so difficult for me to reach out or be responsive to those closest to my heart, or why I was consumed by so much guilt. As I've worked with a therapist for the past year, they have explained that this is the sad reality after experiencing trauma of this magnitude. It wasn't personal, there really wasn't anyone I was speaking to at the time. I ignored every call and text, no matter how important. I wouldn't respond to lawyers or credit card companies about bills that were many months overdue, or collections agencies, anybody. As I said, it was a complete shutdown. My wedding and assault were a little over a year ago. About 6 months after the trauma, I started feeling able to reconnect with friends. Most family and friends were able to connect without explanation. They assumed that I was traveling the world and getting settled into married life and didn't take it too personally. Even my maternal aunt, who is the closest thing to a second mother for me, didn't hear from me during those first 6 months either. I'm having a tougher time with other friends and family, particularly my best friend. We were as thick as thieves, and she's the closest thing to a sister I'll ever have. We've been friends for over 10 years and have always shared everything. She's the one who pulled my wedding together. She stayed up with me all night the night before my wedding, went wedding dress shopping with me in another state, and let me cry on her shoulder for who knows how many hours during the toughest parts of my life. I feel her absence viscerally. Over the past 6 months, as I've been doing a bit better, I have attended 2 social events with my husband. As I meet new people, I find myself talking about her, how proud I am to have her as a friend and how cool she is. I ache every day that we've disconnected in this way. She reached out to me quite a bit via text in the 6 months after my marriage, but like everyone else, I was an unresponsive catatonic ghost. For the past 6 months, I've reached out to her but mostly said vague things to try and reconnect without mentioning anything about the trauma. I have sent messages along the lines of, "I miss you, I'm sorry I've been a terrible friend, and I would love to speak when you feel ready, but I've had no luck." She hasn't responded to me or opened some of my messages. I know and validate that it must be deeply upsetting to invest so much in a wedding, be such close friends for so many years, and then have me suddenly ghost her. It must also be really scary. She must have worried sick that something had happened. Ghosting is a terrible thing, and I wish I could explain to her that it had nothing to do with her and everything to do with what happened in that hotel that day. She's actually the only person in the world I would be willing to tell the whole story to. I would trust her with my life. But given that she hasn't responded to my attempts at reconnecting, how do I approach this situation? It's been 2 months since I sent my last vague apology text asking to reconnect when she's ready. I know that I can't force anyone to speak with me, but I'd like to give her closure and let her know what happened. My vague messages are probably not helpful since they don't explain what occurred, but at the same time, I'm not sure what to do. It's not like I can send a message saying, "Sorry I got sexually assaulted, that's why I ghosted you," as that feels too alarming. At the same time, it's been almost a year of going from being the best of friends to having no connection, so I understand if I need to share more via text to explain what happened here. However, I also do not want to burden anyone else with my pain if that's not the right approach. I feel extremely vulnerable in this situation and about opening up. Even though I'm doing better, I am in no way healed. I started a new job a few months ago and had to take a medical leave of absence after the first week due to anxiety about dealing with others. I'm still struggling daily in every aspect of my life. Friendships, family, mental health, physical health, intimacy, complex PTSD, self-esteem, marriage, everything. Even though I'm doing better, I'm still very raw and can't afford to be hurt more as I try to heal. How do I approach reconnecting in a way that validates how my best friend feels while also giving her the missing context that would explain what happened? Edit, since a lot of people asked about my husband. He's been perfectly supportive and by my side. This situation has also been extremely difficult for him, and he was very consumed with helping me through those health issues in the first 6 months. I didn't mention him heavily in the post because my question was specifically about reconnecting with others, not about strengthening my marriage. Edit 2, a lot of folks messaged me and were confused about the exact timelines. I went back and looked at my texts and it turns out I actually did respond to her about 3 months after the trauma. I was in the hospital at the time, which I think is why I had forgotten about this. I tried to open up and mention being extremely sick, having another surgery, and being hospitalized, but I did not mention the sexual assault or trauma. She did not respond. That was the last time she ever messaged me. After that, I spent a year reaching out to her, but those messages have been on the vaguer side. I didn't mind talking about the assault a few months in, but I didn't feel like it was a conversation starter. She hasn't responded to anything during that time. Hope that clarifies things for those messaging me. User Kira said, "That vague text wasn't helpful. I'm sorry. Consider writing her a letter. If you don't feel comfortable explaining what happened, just make sure to tell her that something occurred right after the wedding that left you mentally and emotionally unable to connect with anyone besides your husband. Acknowledge that you understand how hurtful it must have been for her to be ignored and ghosted like that. If she's willing, express that you'd like to tell her in person or on a call what exactly happened. However, if she feels like it's been too long or she's too hurt to hear it, let her know you'll respect her wishes. If she wants to talk, you will be there for her. I wouldn't mention closure though. Also, keep in mind that she could have gone through all sorts of things this past year while you weren't there for her. This isn't meant to shame you, it's just pointing out a possibility. You'll notice that in my proposed letter, I didn't suggest you should apologize. It's because I'm not sure if you should or how you should. Besides, you shouldn't apologize for being assaulted. That's insane. However, the fact that you ghosted people remains true, and some may not be willing to overlook it, whether they know what happened or not. Again, this is just laying out the situation simply. I hope your friend finds it in her heart to listen to you and that you both can mend fences. Good luck and all the best. User Louis Lou said, I may get downvoted for this, but hear me out. Firstly, what you went through is horrific. I'm really glad you're in therapy and healing, and I'm sorry that ever happened to you. I fully understand what you mean about shutting down in that moment, and unfortunately, that meant leaving behind friends and family because you had nothing left in you. It makes sense, and I do not think you're a bad person for it. However, how you've described your best friend suggests that this must have really hurt her. She had no understanding of why the person she loved so dearly ghosted her, and now you're sending a vague apology hoping to reconnect. There's a strong chance that she may never want to reconnect, or if she does, your relationship may never really be the same because of the hurt that was caused. It's very sad because it's really unfair, but she's allowed to be hurt and might understand but not appreciate why you just vanished. What I'm saying is that you may need to prepare for the possibility of not having her back in your life. I do wish you all the best though. This final post was made in the same subreddit by a user named Global Committee. The post is titled, My Fiancé Kicked Me 4 Times in the Chest. We've been together for 6 years and we were planning to get married in 2025. For years, I felt that he actually loved me, but a few nights ago, he got angry at me. It wasn't the angriest he had ever been, but I was trying to push him off while he was playing his games, and I don't know what happened, but something flipped. He kicked me hard in the chest 4 times, even after I fell to the floor. He never once asked if I was okay that night. I know that it is not right to do that to someone else, but why do people act this way towards someone they love? Is putting your hands on your partner ever justifiable? I'm possibly still in denial, but what am I supposed to do now? I've always heard stories about partners putting their hands on each other, but I never thought it would happen to me. I know I should leave and I want to, but it's easier said than done. I feel helpless because I don't have anyone to talk to about it. Update. I never would have imagined that the internet would be so kind to me. I wish I could reply to everyone, but please know that I've read every single message. You have no idea how much your words mean to me. Having complete strangers care for my safety in such a genuine way has been incredibly uplifting. I've moved out and blocked him everywhere, but he managed to apologize to me via email. He finally acknowledged that what he did was wrong, but not without placing half the blame on me. He mentioned that he snapped because of the times I've tried to leave him. I can't lie, when I was reading the email I almost fell for it. But then I remembered the words of the thousands of strangers on Reddit, you gave me strength. As I'm typing this update, I'm at the hospital waiting for a scan. To clarify why I pushed him off, he was playing video games and wanted oral sex, but I was not in the mood for it, so I pushed him off. If the roles were reversed, I would never physically hurt someone, even if they were weaker than me. I am aware of the consequences of staying in an abusive relationship, but when these fears become a reality, it takes a while to fully accept it because I never imagined it would happen to me. I knew him for 6 years, but I guess I never really did. I'm so sorry to those who read this and are reminded of how it felt for them, and to those who are currently experiencing similar situations like mine, please get out. User Writers Right said, please take these comments seriously. Your life is in danger. User Lucky Luke said, cancel the wedding and get out before we read about you in the news. User Ray of Sunshines said, people do this because they have it in them and are good at hiding it for long periods of time. Often, when people get married, the abuse gets worse because the abuser knows it's harder for the victim to escape at that point. He may be feeling empowered in a similar way by the plans to get married next year. Kicking you hard in the chest could kill you in the right scenario, so please realize he could easily kill you if he was able to do that. He could have done it that time. You need to find family or friends you can stay with, or if you can afford a hotel, then stay in one. Shelters are a good worst case scenario if you can't find anyone or anywhere else to stay. Please get out. Please get help. There is probably a women's crisis center or something similar in your area. Start Googling and they can help you leave if you contact them. You are also well within your rights to report this to the police and have him arrested so you have time to leave. He may try to keep you from leaving if he realizes you're planning to.